I don't know if I can zoom out for our online Sangha, but we've got a full house here this morning. So thank you for your patience as we get everybody situated and organized. Oh, there we all are. Okay. Everyone is returning from the breakout rooms. We've got a full Zendo here. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Thank you all for being here for this morning's Dharma talk. This morning's Dharma talk, you have seen this man in Sunday Morning Zen. You have heard of him in sessions. Shh. I would love to welcome for this morning's Dharmic musings, Ken Daigu Hillman.
The opening. Can you all hear me online? A man goes to see a doctor in a small Italian city, and he says, "Doctor, I am suffering from incredible depression and anxiety. It's hard for me to go on about my day. It's hard for me to do anything. I'm so depressed, and I really need your help in order to do my job." And the doctor said, "You, my friend, are in luck, because tonight in this city at the auditorium, the great Pagliacci, the greatest clown of all time, will be performing. And there is not a man alive who can sit through the performance of the great Pagliacci and not be moved and healed from depression. So I'm not only going to prescribe this to you, but because I am one of the sponsors of the event, I'm going to give you a ticket tonight." And the man cried out, "But doctor, I am Pagliacci." I was not expecting a laugh on that. And also, as an aside, we all operate under false perceptions and pretenses. I had thought up until recently that shh was a Sanskrit word meaning holy man. I was not correct. We live in interesting times. That's actually a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. And these interesting times are we have a hard time figuring out what's real and what's not. And increasingly, we don't really care about what's real or what's not. We just want to be entertained. We just want to be distracted from our own suffering. And those of us, I think, who try to address that head on find ourselves in a smaller and smaller minority amongst our brethren in humanity. And particularly to study Zen in the 21st century West in the United States is difficult because we are inundated with social media. We are inundated with images, and without even knowing it, we are told what's real and what's not, what's true and what's not, what's good and what's not. And as a result of that, we have a hard time understanding and what is our own decision and what is being foisted upon us by acculturation or genetics or whatever. And so I'm going to ask a question, okay? If you guys have noticed, I don't have notes. I'm not sitting on the regular chair with the flower. I apologize, Roshi's there. I'm going flowerless today. It's been done. So we're going to do what we call crowd work, okay? So there's no heckling because you're going to get a microphone too. No, we're going to even things out. But when you saw the setup like this, what did you see? What did you see? I was going to say, Linda, who is somehow above using electronics, I believe, she said she saw a nightclub, okay? Shishin, go ahead. No, not until you turn it on.
Tom, Linda and I run the.
I saw the relay, yes.
I saw what looks like a stool and what looks like a microphone sitting on it.
Okay. So our perceptions can be very, very different. Shishin, as a student of Dogen, you saw things more as they are, whereas Linda brought up a representation, okay? The chair means the Dharma talk. The stool might mean something different to some people, but we all have that feeling. And for those of us who thought, well, it looks like a comedy club or it looks like a nightclub, okay, that representation, as Thich Nhat Hanh wrote and other people in studying the Abhidharma, as a representation is almost always incorrect. It also almost always, maybe always, makes us feel a certain way, okay? If you're at a dinner party and somebody says, what do you do? Oh, I teach. Okay. Oh, that's fascinating. What do you teach? For Shishin, it might be, I used to teach medical school students, right? Or I'm a therapist, okay? And what that basically then comes back to in terms of the dialogue with somebody is, oh, tell me more, that's fascinating. They open up. But if somebody says, I'm a comedian, okay, funny boy, make me laugh. There's a closing up, okay? And one of the things that I have done in preparing for this, and obviously I haven't written anything down, but the type of humor that, first of all, this would be is improv. I am ready. I have been doing this for months, trying to get ready. Pick the perfect time when we could send the Roshis 1,500 miles away. Yes, excellent. Excellent. So, but I've occupied Roshi.
You can't get rid of us that easily.
I sent you the article, Roshi Robert, on consciousness. Go study. Go study. Go study. But the idea here is what is it that we consider funny, and how does it interact with who we are, how we think, and how we feel? So, step 2, the setup. And I'm going to borrow from the late, great Rodney Dangerfield. No respect. No respect, I tell you. I went to my doctor, Dr. Vinny Boombas. I said, Doc, I got no respect. He said, have you tried changing your name? I said, Doc, even Shakespeare said, what's in a name? He said, hey, you're going to listen to me, you're going to listen to one of your friends. So that one I expected more laughs than the first one, but be open to whatever's going to happen. So this is the me, what's left, hopefully, of myself, or as I like to think of it, perhaps unpleasantly, the skin sack of skandhas that is me, okay? This is my third Dharma talk. The first 2 were about going to Auschwitz and coming back from Auschwitz. So I had an option. Do I want to finish the death trilogy and do something about death? No, though if this goes poorly, it might in fact manifest on its own, right? So over the past year, something incredibly important that took place in my life, and that was that I received Jukai from Jun Roshi. And I, as part of that, received my Dharma name of Daigu. And that was sort of the inspiration for this talk. Because when, this Sangha is just so amazing and so open and friendly. Ken, congratulations on Jukai. Oh, thank you. So you got your Dharma name. Yes, what is it? It's Daigu. Oh, what does it mean? The great fool or the great foolishness. And then they'd look and they'd go, oh, that's nice too. I mean, come on, folks. Do I look like flower of the Dharma? I am not flower of the Dharma. I am Daigu. And as I wrote on Circle, I am Daigu. I think Daigu thoughts. I say Daigu words. And I do Daigu things. But what does that really mean? So this talk was an attempt, or is an attempt, to walk through my relationship with humor as it continues to evolve on my path of the Dharma. And doing so, I'm kind of sad because a couple of weeks ago, Ango ended. And I was okay with that. Ango, for those of you who don't know, is a 90-day intensification period of practice and study. And it was an amazing experience. And I didn't really feel like it was the last day of summer camp because I was working on this Dharma talk. And for me, it was still alive. So today, I'm a little sad, like Pagliacci. But thank goodness, not nearly as bad as him, at least in the joke, right? To understand that this is my ending of Ango. So what did I do to prepare? I started with, and these are the, in the construct of the Dharma talk, seems like everybody likes to bring books. So I have books, look everybody. I'm prepared. Books. Okay. The first one was Shakespeare's Great Stage of Fools. Okay? This was written by my freshman advisor and English 101 professor, Robert Bell, who studied Shakespeare and Shakespeare's Fools as his specialty throughout his career. And what was interesting to me about that was you had the fools in Shakespeare who were deemed fools, the jesters. And one of the interesting ploys of the jesters in Shakespeare is that they always seem to foretell the end of the play at the beginning, but nobody listened to them. Why? They were jesters. They had nothing to say. It wasn't serious. They were just kidding. But what's interesting about it is they knew, but the people who supposedly knew didn't know. The other form of fool or jester was those who didn't know that they were jesters, and my favorite being Falstaff, okay? For him, discretion being the better part of valor means I can be brave by being a coward, okay? Like I said, we live in interesting times where the opposite is true, where 1 + 1 can equal 3, to borrow from Orwell, right? So what is it about these fools? Now, one of the things that Professor Bell started writing about was a book called In Praise of Folly, because the word fool comes from the word folly. And this was written in the 17th century, around the same time as Shakespeare, by Desiderius Erasmus. okay? It has been credited as being one of the triggers of the birth of humanism, moving away from we service the Lord by building churches and living in hovels and giving away all our money to, hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. There may be something more than that. There may be something more for us. So this folly, and folly comes from the French term folie, which means madness. And again, going back to my good friend Shakespeare. As they said in Hamlet, this is madness, yet there is method to it, okay? There's a reason for folly and for madness. And what I'd like to do in the tradition of the great storytime readers of Dharma talk is I want to read a quote from Mariah. Mariah is the narrator. Mariah is folly herself, okay? But if you ask me why I appear before you in this strange dress, be pleased to lend me your ears, and I'll tell you. Not those ears. I mean, you carried a church, but abroad with you, such as you were wont to prick up to jugglers, fools, and buffoons, and such as our friend Midas once gave to Pan. That struck me as a very Buddhist term. If you're not going to perceive me as being funny, I'm not going to be funny. And part of what I tried to show here is the iconography of, in 21st century America, as we were referred to, even though America is not a country. But no, don't let facts and the truth get in the way of a good story. But in 21st century America, that is an iconic comedic image, right? And we then start to go on this trip, on this journey of telling ourselves a story that doesn't exist even in the least little bit. So I'm going to try to take us through that a little bit in terms of my story. The narrative. Mrs. Goldberg loved taking her grandson, little Moishe, to Rockaway Beach. She dressed him up in his little, sailor outfit with a sunbonnet and high socks and cute little shoes, and he would play in the sand and was having fun going back and forth to the water, filling up the bucket and doing this. Except in one moment, a big wave came, caught little Moishe, and the undertow took him out to sea. Mrs. Goldberg was distraught. Oh God, you have taken my little Moishe. I will do whatever it takes to get him back. I will go to synagogue every Shabbos from now on. I will keep kosher. I will increase my donations to Hadassah and to the synagogue. Whatever it takes, God, please. And wouldn't you know it, on the next wave, it comes in, and there's little Moishe. He gets up, coughing, sputtering, no worse for the wear and tear. Gets up, she looks up, she goes, he was wearing a hat. I grew up in New York City in the 60s and 70s. A very unique place in post-World War II America. I grew up thinking that most people were Jewish because most people who I grew up around was Jewish. Memo to everybody, turns out not so much. But this was how I grew up. And humor was an important part of what I was growing up with. I grew up an overweight, overly sensitive kid in a family where having a sense of humor and being funny wasn't quite as important as getting good grades, but it was up there. And it was part of the identity that we were given. You're the smart one. You're the fixer-upper. You're the athlete. You're the funny one. You're the, what doesn't really matter, whatever it was. And I always loved the fact that I was supposed to be the smart one. And yet it was my kid brother who wound up getting an MBA and a JD. And I'm perfectly happy staying with my bachelor's. So I was like, ha, okay, ma, wherever you are. There you go. But at the time, over 70% of working comics in the United States were Jewish. The Jewish perspective was synonymous with comedy, and the comedy then became a mirror for the Jewish experience. If you grew up with the Marx Brothers, the Three Stooges, for those of you a little bit older, if you remember the Rosenbergs, the Bickersons, was all based in this outsider immigrant experience, okay? I hung with my family, we could fight, but God help anybody who messed with any of us, then we would band together, okay? So it was an outsider's experience of trying to fit in. Groucho once said, I would never be part of a club that would have me, okay? That is a pretty famous line, but when you understand it from the Jewish immigrant experience, you're basically, for the first time, saying, we are now in a place where I can now reject the people who reject me. I can now make it, because this is a capitalistic society, where what I do is more important than how I was born. Okay? And that's pretty powerful to have that. And that's how I grew up. The movies, I mean, I grew up in, I was born in 1963, and I think soon after that, I believe it was 1968, was Mel Brooks coming out with The Producers, which, by the way, was the I see Robert nodding. Yes, I'm not going to sing it because Roshi, I've sang the first two. I'm not singing today. Maybe I will later. But, okay, fine. He's springtime for Hitler and Germany. Bum, ba-dum, bum. Very funny. But when you think about it, we're less than 25 years after the end of World War II. There's now a musical comedy about Nazis, okay? So it started to turn it on its ear. I started to realize that the pain could be transformed. And if we can transform the pain into something else, then in fact, we might be doing something. Another thing more recently that I loved was, and a show of hands, anybody ever read the book Black Elk Speaks? Brilliant, okay? Black Elk was a member of the Oglala tribe and was what they call a Heyoki. I think that's pronounced correctly, which was the spiritual leaders. You could only be a member of the Heyoks or Heyokis if you had a spiritual experience yourself. But what was interesting was that the only way that they would give the messages, the spiritual messages that the tribe needed to hear, and in this case, the spiritual message that the tribe is going to be destroyed, that the way of life was going to be destroyed, that basically it will be an existential crisis that the tribe will not, or if they do, barely get by. The way they did it was with humor. And the reason Black Elk explains is that the humor was a language that people could take. If you say, hey, everybody, by the way, we're all going to die tomorrow, it would not go over well. You'd have people screaming and crying. You'd have people denying it. But you have this idea of humor being a means to deliver the truth as a language. Now, it's not, in my opinion, coincidental that one of the absolute biggest advantages that this Sangha has, that the ZLMC has, is that both of our Roshis are accomplished artists. Okay? Not only do our Roshis teach us about nonverbal communication, and Jun Roshi, you do need a vacation after the last 6 months of me trying to make it through koan number 1. So I'm not quite at I'm not quite at my peak of nonverbal communication. But I'm also quite the fanboy of Carl Jung and the archetypes. And what humor allows me to do is find my own, not non-verbal, but or not silent, but not intellectualized, okay? I'm from the Vajra family. I like to know how the sausage is made. But for me, humor is a way of delivering these messages in a way that can be understood. And by the way, if you've ever read Jung, one of his books that I think it was his last book that he put together with some of his disciples or his students or other professors who learned from him, was Signs and Symbols. Okay? Humor is not a sign. It's a symbol. It's a metaphor. Does anybody know, by the way, what metaphor means? Meta being to over, and for, the PHOR, to carry over. Okay, it's a transformational carryover, which, by the way, is exactly the same as an alternate meaning of paramita, which means carry over to the other shore. So this metaphor as use of transformation and doing it in a way that is consistent with, consistent with how we want to live our lives and how we want to speak our truth, this humor becomes pretty important to us. And for me, I mentioned earlier that Ango was a time where I got to dive into the Abhidharma. It was a time I got to go into the 5 Buddha families, or the 5 Buddha energies, and I started comparing it to Jung's archetypes, okay? And I noticed 2 things that were missing. Number 1, the compensatory nature of dreams, which we just don't deal with, that's fine. Put that off to the side. But number 2, there's no trickster. In fact, in the Dharma, you don't separate out the humor into a different archetype. You have different energies within each of the Buddha family. And I wasn't, and again, being that I did not write anything, I prepped, but I did not write, so I wasn't sure how much time we were going to have. Maybe I'll take a couple of minutes now talking a little bit about what I've learned about my transformation of humor. So I'm just going to go back and kind of flow through. We'll see how this goes. So as I got older, I got caught up in the relative world. Make a lot of money. Oh, not enough. Make some more. Oh, make some more. Oh, well, let's just keep making more. Oh, until we stop making money, and then our world starts to collapse. And about 5 years ago, I hit what I like to call my rock bottom. I was about 50 pounds heavier, massive ADD, depression. My diabetes was out of control. I was borderline insulin dependent. And on a whim, I went to a comparative religion class on Zoom with my synagogue, and that's where I met Jun Roshi. And she had me at Bernie Glassman, because at the time I was reading Bearing Witness. And I was fascinated. And she mentioned Auschwitz. There I go. There he goes with Auschwitz. But that's when I decided to join the Sangha, take on Jun Roshi as my teacher, and literally start to transform my life, starting with sitting and not talking. What happened as I started to get to know myself a bit reminded me of a quote from Michelangelo after he did David. And he said, "How did you create such a masterpiece out of a block of marble?" It was marble, right? Yeah, it was marble. And by the way, the story behind that even more is that it was a flawed block of marble, which caused Michelangelo to redirect how he was positioned, how David was positioned to work within the confines of the flaw, similar to the way we work within the confines of the Zen circle not being complete. We work with what we have. As Tetzigan, Bernie Glassman would say, we're making a stew. Don't worry about what the ingredients are, but we got to eat. So what I found was myself chipping away at those things that were not me. And how do you know? Because our personas, Ken Hillman, the funny guy, Ken Hillman, the extrovert. Ken Hillman loves to be where the action, maybe not so much. So becoming Daigu allowed me to recreate my relationship with humor. And the first thing that chipped away was sarcasm. Sarcasm to me became weaponized humor. And I realized that it was a way that I used to deal with my mom. You know, Ken, I haven't heard from you in like 4 days. You could be dead, I wouldn't know. I said, Ma, I'm sure a state trooper would have come by if I were dead. That was a real conversation. That was that was our love language, was attack and defend, parry, thrust, touche, okay? My dad, who had a much drier sense of humor, my mom, by the way, was in show business. She was a dancer. My dad was a CPA. But I also noticed some of his humor was also quite mean towards my mom. You know, honey, you married well outside of your social structure. You did quite well. And it took me a while to go, that's not funny. That's just mean. And so one of the things that I love now being Daigu is that I get to choose what is funny and fit that humor into how I choose to live my life. So for me, humor is not, bear with me and jump in if anybody doesn't buy this. Humor is not going to be, for me, destructive, but deconstructive. Humor, how many, show of hands, how many people remember The Emperor Has No Clothes? Of course, yes, okay? It's just, let me describe it this way. It's a story of delusion and how it takes a child to break through the delusion of an entire kingdom. Okay, I'll buy that. But if you can't make fun of something, okay, you're going to listen to that with the ears that you bring to church. You're not going to listen to it as someone who travels overseas. And again, a lot of people talk about you go on your path, you travel someplace you've never been. And the irony for me, my karma, is that I have become that guy I used to make fun of. I see Greg is on, one of my best friends from college, teammate on the crew, and a fine lawyer, by the way, too. But he can tell you that the joke used to be what was important. And now, for me, I want to live my life not only by the tenets of our Zendo, not knowing, bearing witness, and then eventually compassionate action arising, but finding meaning, purposeful work, and experiencing love. Those are now I now have my own personal tenets. And everything that I do runs through that. So for me, humor is a way of breaking down artifices. It's a way of deconstructing. It's a way of understanding that, as Gertrude Stein once referred to Philadelphia, there is no there. Sorry, Greg. Greg's from Philly, or lives in Philly. So the idea here is, coming out of Ango, I now have been able to sort of try to fit the humor that I see in the universe. And again, well, where is it in the Dharma? Well, it's everywhere, all right? Were there Zen masters? I looked them up. Yeah, they have. You can Google, joyful, humorous Zen masters, and there's a list. And I didn't bring the list. I'm not here to relay other stuff that you can find out there. But in terms of me, I find it a great tool to deconstruct that which, to me, probably needs to be broken down so I can see it for what it is, which is nothingness. And I love that. So I will give you, I mentioned, and I will close on this and then see if we have any questions, heckling, or whatever, really. So I came up with a Vajra joke, okay? The Vajra family is one, where you'll deep thinking. I believe the negative energy is anger. That's right? Yeah. So the humor within that, but it's going to be multi-layered, deep, and very subtle. So since I've done all the things I said I wasn't going to do, I wasn't going to sing, I sang, and I wasn't going to talk about Auschwitz, but here's my joke. A Holocaust survivor dies, goes up to heaven, and God says, "Welcome to heaven." He goes, "I know it's been a long trip, come on in. I know you've survived a lot." And the Holocaust survivor says, "Before I go in, I want to tell you a joke." And he tells this joke about the Holocaust, and God says, "I don't think that's funny." And the Holocaust survivor goes, "Guess you had to be there." Any questions, comments? I did collect all the old fruit, so we're not going to need Samu afterwards. Go grab a...
Okay, I missed the punchline, so I don't know what God said.
Well,
But I have another thing to say.
What's that?
I said I have a question.
Okay, no, I will. Okay. So in other words, the joke is, you've heard the comment with certain jokes, guess you had to be there.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I just didn't hear what you said.
Oh, yeah. Guess you had, yeah.
You had to be there.
Guess you
Okay,
had to be
I got
there.
it, I get it.
Okay. So what's your question then?
My question is, could you talk about the difference between representation and metaphor? Because when she said it looks like a nightclub, well, okay, she was using simile, but you said it was representation. And to me, metaphor is like naming something by something that's similar, in poetry, So I'm kind of confused.
I was prepared for just about every question, but that one came. No. I've been starting to sit with that actual question.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Because in the Abhidharma, there are three ways of perceiving something.
Okay.
Okay? Now, the one being perceiving something as it is. Okay? As Shishin said, I just saw a bench with a microphone. Yes. Okay, I saw Walmart, by the way, because that's where I bought this, and that's where it's going back this afternoon. Sorry, Roshi, not keeping the stool. But the idea, at least to me, and is how we perceive things is broken out into, as it is, a representation, which is basically running through our manas, okay? Which, for all intents and purposes, is our ego, okay? How does it affect me? What's going on with this? What do I know this? It's all about the me, that self-standing, permanent self, okay? And then an image which, at the very least, you're not getting confused about. It's a photograph. You know it's not a rainforest. It's a photograph of a rainforest, okay? A metaphor is on the other side. You're not taking it in. You are trying to describe it using a metaphor. You're trying to carry over to an understanding on the other side of away from where you are now. Okay. So for me, and again, it's an imperfect answer, but that's the working answer that I have so far, because it kind of hit me in the last couple of days. I'm like, wait a minute. If representations are, according to Thich Nhat Hanh, always wrong, right. Okay? And metaphors are a way of truth. It might be, a metaphor can be, once you get rid of and transform your ego, your manas, you can then give representations that are not part of you, that are...
Oh, I see. So then you're actually moving into the land of metaphor. I mean, you're actually moving...
Yeah, I think it's, at least for me, okay. It's aspirational. Roshis, you want to give that one a...
No.
Well, yeah, I love the idea that a metaphor is like the paramitas. And I think the notion of metaphor is that it allows for more possibilities. It doesn't create closure in the same way. So different people can perceive the same metaphor differently. I don't know. I'm on vacation. I don't want to think too hard here. That's why I came to your talk, Daigu.
Yeah. Well, and all right, you can, Roshi, you can mute now. Thank you.
Okay, I will.
But it's funny because in comedy, okay, the late great Andy Kaufman used to do something where he would get up and start reading poetry, okay, and he would keep going until the audience started to boo, until they started to realize, I came here to see comedy and I'm not seeing it, and he wasn't going to start until they started booing. One night, he had the most incredibly polite audience, and he read poetry for an hour and a half, okay? For some people, that's not funny. I think that's one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life, okay? Is that, you know, to be able to stay with it for that long, to stay with the discomfort, to turn the tide on the audience and say, if you're okay with this, I'm gonna keep doing it. Anybody else? Oh, wait, on.
I really liked what you were saying, how humor deconstructs things. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how humor can deconstruct delusions.
Absolutely. I think the idea is one of the points I was making earlier about the Roshis being artists. It is a low art, but comedy is an art, okay? You can make a living with it, people can like it, not like it, it's all relative. But for me, if you can start to see things as they are and break through delusions, and you wanted to help a friend, you know, it's a whole lot easier to go, hey, have you ever noticed how it's kind of funny that you did it? And it's like, oh, it's not a sign. It's not a direct statement. It's a symbol. It requires translation. It requires thought. And that seed might take hold. Doesn't mean it will. But yeah, you have to be cognizant enough of what the delusion is. Okay. And so what I will end with apologies to Shishin. Something that Dogen never said, but to me he did. To study the joke is to forget the joke. To forget the joke is to study the truth. To study the truth is to open the 10,000 laughter gates. Find the truth and find the reality, and the joke is probably on the underside somewhere. Okay?
Thank you, Tom. Thank you,
Roshi's,
Daigu.
by the way, if Mark is looking at me like I just pooped on the Buddha. We don't. I am making an assumption that he didn't say that specifically, but yes. Dogen as metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have the thing about the trickster is kind of interesting. Because yeah, I don't know if we had tricksters in Buddhism for a while until Bernie came along. There were Zen masters that were probably tricksters. And but the idea of the trickster seems to be that if anyone's saying anything with taking themselves too seriously, like Zen masters do sometimes, then you need, if you've got priests around, you always need a clown to make fun of them, because they tend to, they talk and they kind of pontificate and stuff. And so you need someone that makes fun of them, and that's the trickster thing. And so, and that was always, we did some clown workshops with Mr. Yuhu, Moshe, and it was, he considers, being a jester a high art, knowing when to create confusion.
Well, and
knowing when to deconstruct the situation.
Well, and again, it's an important distinction that trickster is not unlike Shakespeare's jesters, and I think that what we all want to figure out is, with discretion being the better part of valor, one of the things I've learned is more shh and less letting not everything, because you talk about my thoughts, okay? Not every thought that comes into my head, according to the Abhidharma, is my thought, okay? The acculturation, the genetics, all of that. So if something comes up, I don't need to say it. Shocking, but true, right? So it's been, really for me, this has been this incredible tool that I have used throughout Ango on my path. So I just want to thank you very much, guys.
Thank you all for being here. Any other, I want to give our online Sangha a chance. Any other comments, questions? We're about at time here. All right. Well, we do have some delicious snacks in our community room for those who would love to stay for kinship hour for some fellowship. The rest of you online, enjoy your vacation. Go find the love today that is out there. Have a beautiful Sunday.
Nice job, Ken. Daigu, nice job.
Daigu, Daigu, Daigu.
I'm the one in the middle, Roshi.
In the middle.
Don't go away yet. We're gonna just stay here and bother them.
And hi, Adrian.
We're going to show them how good it is where we are so they can
Oh,
all
there's
feel.
Ellen. Ellen is there too.
What's the temperature here in Florida?
We're getting heckled from the Roshis by a fire. The peanut gallery out there, or whatever.
Yeah, we don't want to go. I mean, that was just like
you.
the
We
fun's
miss
just
you.
getting started. It's like,
Diane, you'll get
They're just
Sue
getting
on.
started.
Oh, there's Atticus.
they're all leaving to go eat. I know where you're all going. I know where you're going, Diane. I know where you're going, Diane. You're going to the community room to eat some sweets.
Who's that?
Looks familiar. It's not. not-
Oh, look, there's Melanie. Atticus. On.
Okay, I guess we should go, huh?
Hey, your hair's getting longer.
You finding some sunshine out there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been pretty cold and cloudy here. You also have some beautiful
Oh.
artwork that boxes we moved to the back of the community room, so
Okay,
it's
yeah.
all safe and secure.
Okay.
So we're holding down the fort while you're gone. Hurry back.
Okay. Just don't burn down the house.
Don't have your friends over. Make sure you turn the stove off. Yeah, we've got a full house today and lots of yummy snacks.
Wonderful.
We have a new visitor,
Yeah.
Steve, who brought some brownies, and Kathy brought a Kringle, some sort of Kringle crisp, and toffee back there, all kinds of goodies.
Okay.
Enjoy the day.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Love you.